Resiliency is that power to bounce back, and a lot of these families have had a lot of different experiences where they've hit rock bottom and they've needed to bounce back with minimal support system, minimal financial support, and they've done it.
Crisis and stress and trauma and mental health aren't always the top priority for families when they come to Freedom House Ministries. On today's episode of Inside the House podcast, we sit down with Kaylee Hintz, therapist from N.E.W. Community Clinic, to talk about mental health and the journey for families to stability. Kaylee, we often hear, get a job or just get back on your feet. What does that phrase miss about what's happening from a mental health standpoint of family that's coming into Freedom House?
Yeah. I think that we often hear that from different community members about just get a job or just get back on your feet. And it can be very misleading. There's a lot more behind that. It's very complex in terms of a mental health perspective. There's a lot of different dimensions that go into that. So in terms of just get a job or get back on your feet, there can be many different barriers. In terms of a mental health perspective, there can be trauma behind it. There can be different kinds of, barriers in terms of motivation or in terms of different kinds of, supports, lack of support system. And there's a lot of different things that go behind that. And we often get misled in terms of individuals just wanting to get back on their feet. But I think that there's a lot more behind that in terms of there needs to be mental health needs met before we can just assume that that can just happen.
And throughout this conversation, Kaylee, again, with HIPAA and confidentiality, is best share as much as you can. Mm-hmm. From the mental health standpoint, what you just said, do you feel or see sometimes that is so overwhelming for the families, mm-hmm. parents or kids that come in here, that they need to understand themselves first from a mental health standpoint before you can maybe move on to the next thing? Obviously housing and employment, mm-hmm. transportation, all those pieces, right? But to understand your mental health first, mm-hmm. to get in a good space before you can move forward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And I think that if individuals and families, if they don't have that right mindset right away, it's very difficult to just get a job or just to transition out of shelter. And we need to refine ourselves, refine our identity, refine what gives us that purpose and what gives us that hope from that mental health perspective. And if we don't find those things initially, it's going to be very difficult to just get out, find a job, go make money, all of these different things. And I think that we need to have that self-actualization and really refine our identity before all of those things can happen.
Can you share in some of the conversations with families or parents or kids that you've had here, what are some of those moments where they realize for themselves that they have value and there's worth mm-hmm. to go ahead and move forward? What is that like when there's kind of that breakthrough?
Yeah, it's really powerful. It's really hopeful. And the first thing that comes to my mind is purpose. It's in these sessions that, families can find that purpose that has been there, but it's been hidden. So refinding that purpose, refinding what motivates them, the things that they want for themselves, the things that they want for their children. It's really powerful and it's really motivating.
When a parent walks through the doors here at Freedom House and there's times where they can feel scared and alone, what are the first conversations like when you get to sit down with them?
Mm-hmm. Typically, it's building rapport, really getting to know the individual, really getting to know, their side of the story, not what people have told them their story is, and really trying to get a better idea of who they are and what they want for themselves and their family. Building that trust with them so that they feel heard and that their story feels heard. That's really my main goal within our first few sessions together, is trying to get a better understanding of them and so that they feel heard, they feel trusted, they feel validated and supported.
Walk us through that journey. If I were to come in today, a family needing shelter, walking into Freedom House, and I want Kaylee the therapist, what is the journey like in the conversations that we might have?
Yeah. So typically right off the bat, we explain what therapy services would look like here. So we explain a little bit about, HIPAA, confidentiality, what it may look like within a shelter setting. And after we sign all of those different consent forms and everything after that, we do an intake assessment. So the intake assessment would be me getting to really know them, their social history, their family history, their mental health history. And like I said earlier, just really getting to hear their side of the story. And then we get into our goals. So we create a treatment plan together. And that treatment plan is based off of goals that they're wanting out of therapy services here while they're at Freedom House. Working on goals in terms of different coping strategies, goals in terms of processing all of these different adjustments in life. And their goals really being at what they're wanting to try to meet them where they're at. And then the following sessions after that, we work on those goals at their pace, meeting them where they are at. And really focusing on, even though that we have these goals implemented, how can we also grow insight towards themselves, meet their goals here at Freedom House as well, and implementing all of that within their treatment plan.
And then, in the nonprofit space, there are times when people say, we'll meet somebody where they're at. Can you explain what that means from a mental health standpoint?
Yes. Meeting clients where they're at, being realistic with what their environment, with what their situation is right now, currently in the moment. Being very mindful that, yes, we may have different expectations of what we're wanting from families and their children during this time, but being very mindful of meeting them where they're at, respecting their situation, using empathy, using dignity, and advocating for them, and specifically not creating these high expectations for them and trying to, advocate for them during the whole period.
Can you talk through, if somebody's never done therapy before or had a session, trying to break down that stigma and stereotype with the individual you're trying to serve or a family?
Yeah. For individuals who have never had therapy before, I really break it down to them as just an extra support, during this adjustment in life, and really that extra guidance, helping give feedback or helping problem solve, really just that safe space for them to process all of life's experiences and stressors, and really normalizing that mental health is a big piece of our life, and trying to break down that stigma, not just, saying that therapy is this big extravagant thing, but really trying to just reframe it as just that healthy, safe support space for individuals and that space for them to feel heard.
How does one or a family that comes in, when they sit down and they start therapy with you, continue that on, maybe when they leave 4 to 6 months in and find housing? How are they able to stay connected with you or the clinic?
Yeah, absolutely. So after individuals and families transition out of Freedom House, we can absolutely continue care outside at the clinic. I actually encourage it because that's also a whole new adjustment as well. So individuals and families can reestablish services at the clinic. And at the clinic, we don't just have mental health therapists. We also have case managers as well. We have, psych med managements that they can also get established with as well. So it's a really smooth transition. I just let individuals know that it's a little bit of a different setting than Freedom House. However, it still provides that safe space for individuals and families to still have the same mental health therapy services as they would here.
I want to ask about the kids. When a family comes in, a lot of the initial effort might be directed towards parents of the bigger goals of housing, obviously being the number one goal. Talk about the kids, though, and the trauma and the crisis they've been through. How do you go about helping children realize that they are essentially along for the ride. It isn't their choice to be here, but they can also help work on themselves too in relation to the parents.
Yeah, absolutely. It's equally important. And when I meet with parents, I often encourage them to get their children also involved in therapy services if that's something that they're interested in, because it's a whole adjustment for the whole family unit. It's not just an adjustment for the parents. So really encouraging the parents to get their children involved in therapy services, encouraging the parents to get their children involved with a school social worker if possible, getting their children involved in different kinds of outside of school activities, if it's Boys and Girls Club, if it's Big Brothers, Big Sisters. More, I guess, identifying healthy spaces for them too, and safe spaces, so that they don't feel so confined during this time, and really trying to grow themselves as well, and refine themselves during this time.
During therapy sessions with parents and kids, how often do you see that bonding grow when they have a safe space just to talk?
Yeah. Very often. It's when we work with the family as a unit, we can improve different kinds of coping skills as a family, learn different strategies on how to communicate with each other during this time period, learning different strategies to give each other space and set boundaries during this time period, because we all need that space, especially during this adjustment. I think too, enhancing different kinds of emotional regulation as a whole family unit, because emotions can be really high during this time. So I guess growing that knowledge on both the parents' end and both the children's end of finding that safe space with one another and growing that bond, but also giving each other that safe space in between, so that it can be more, we can have those healthy boundaries in between.
Kaylee, this has been amazing so far. We're going to take a quick break for one question with Ashley Brick, Success Coach of Freedom House Ministries. Ashley, if you could, a gas card and a bus pass, could you explain the value and importance for families that have and don't have transportation?
Yes, transportation is a huge barrier for so many of our families, absolutely. I mean, you and I use a car to go to work every day, to take our children to appointments, for our own personals, to get groceries. Without transportation, without having their own vehicle and using a gas card or public transit, it's really impossible for them to be able to move forward, honestly, because getting to work alone and without income, we can't really move forward. So in all, transportation is a huge barrier, and they need both.
Kaylee, when you have these therapy sessions and just your interactions with families, what's a moment from your work here that's maybe had you think differently about resiliency of family homelessness?
Yeah. It's really powerful seeing families grow here. It's really powerful seeing the resiliency that they have had, especially throughout their different life experiences. There's many different families here with many different stories, and it's really powerful to see all of their previous life experiences to where they are now and to who they're going to be and who they want to be. Resiliency is that power to bounce back, and a lot of these families have had a lot of different experiences where they've hit rock bottom and they've needed to bounce back with minimal support system, minimal financial support, and they've done it. And it's really powerful to see that here too. It's powerful to see the growth in their own individual supports. It's powerful to see the other staff members here giving them that power and that growth and advocating for them. Resiliency is a big thing here, and every family has it that is here, because they've all had so many different life experiences that have brought them here today.
As a person that gets sit in these closed door meetings, right, and you see the breakthroughs, the resiliency, what does that mean for you as a therapist, as a person, to watch that journey?
Yeah, it's very enlightening. It's really powerful. It really takes us a step back in our own personal life and it has us do our own self-reflection of, practicing that gratitude, really looking at the supports that you have in your own individual life, your own personal life experiences, really taking that step back and having that own self-reflection and being grateful that I've been given this opportunity to also be here to work with these families. It's really powerful.
Being on the front lines, how are you able to separate yourself when you leave here to not be so ingrained in these families' lives? Because they have to make choices to move forward. The secondary trauma that you get to experience in part of these conversations, how are you able to kind of turn that off and go home and go for a walk or watch a movie or whatever it is, to not always be in it?
Yeah. Self-care is huge. Self-care is the big piece that is going to prevent any further burnout. So being able to separate yourself from the therapy setting is very difficult. However, it is manageable with self-care, doing things that, individuals personally find joyful or relaxing or peaceful, and not making it easy by any means. However, it definitely helps separate that in a healthy way.
Well, we thank you for what you're doing, Kaylee, to help each family here. I want to ask, you talked about in a previous answer you just had of each family's got a different journey. Are there any common threads in the therapy sessions that you have from a mental health standpoint with all the different journeys?
Yeah. A lot of these journeys, there's been a pattern of a lot of traumatic experiences that have brought them here today. A lot of traumatic experiences that we often forget about, that a lot of families have experienced. So if that's traumatic experiences during childhood, that it's kind of been that generational trauma, or if there's been traumatic experiences that they've experienced during young adulthood that has brought them here today. A lot of different patterns of trauma speak out to me. Also, too, a lot of things that have been not in their control. So if there's been instances where it's been in terms of finances or in terms of physical health, a lot of different barriers that have led them here today, that often, we have that stereotype towards, like you were sharing earlier, just get a job, go do this, go do that. But there's so many other barriers underneath. And in therapy, we really learn how complex it is so that we can start to break through those barriers as best as we can.
As a person as a whole, mind, body, and spirit, how really connected are the three of them? Obviously, you're in the mind space. How important is it to have all three of those in balance? So important. So important. I mean, mental health is just as important as physical health, spiritual health, our mind, our whole body, our whole soul. It's all equally important. And to have all of those in place and to have a balance can benefit us in so many different ways. So within therapy sessions, it's really that holistic approach that we try to focus on. The financial health, the mental health, the physical health, spiritual health, so that individuals and families here can have a better, more clarity on moving forward. Conversations that you have with families or parents or maybe even kids, and in those conversations, does it come up where they're struggling or are they broken? And how do you go about talking through that?
Yeah. Well, definitely reframing some of these thinking patterns. So to reframe that someone, if they feel that they're broken during this journey, trying to reframe it into, right now, in this time of life, there's this struggle and we're able to bounce back from this. So trying to reframe it with building their own individual confidence, refining that sense of self, as we talked about before, really trying to refine their journey, refine their purpose so that they don't feel that sense of broken and that they're able to recognize that, we all struggle as humans. However, if we have that purpose, if we have that hope and we know where our journey is taking us, they can feel more empowerment in themselves and less broken.
Can you share on this journey that you reframing it, right? Mm-hmm. What are some of the small things that have been said or that you look for to help an individual reframe their thought process? Can you give a couple examples?
Yeah. So often here, at Freedom House, we try to build different coping strategies that are realistic and manageable here. So that can look like some different kinds of empowering affirmations or different kinds of coping statements to be able to reframe those hard times and rebuild that confidence during that time. So, even coping statements of I can get through this, or this intense feeling is temporary. I've been through hard things before, I can get through this part. Trying to rebuild their confidence through different kinds of affirmations or coping statements like that. Really emphasizing self-care too during this time so that individuals can have that time to find that peace, find that relaxation, find that sense of joy and find things that re-energize them, rather than just having their mind focused on all of the struggles that are, they're currently going through. So emphasizing self-care, different kinds of affirmations, and different kind of coping statements stick out to me. And two, building supports, building a sense of community while they're here, getting them connected with different community resources so that they can feel heard and they can have that sense of belonging.
I think we can all agree and understand that we are in the midst of a housing crisis. There's a lack of housing. The cost is out of balance, right? Mm-hmm. When COVID hit in 2020, it kind of maybe put things on hyperspeed of the mental health piece of being aware. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that we're still in a mental health crisis, and how do you go about navigating that? Can you?
Yes, I do still feel like we're in a mental health crisis. Absolutely. It's normalizing, normalizing mental health concerns, normalizing that, everybody has different mental health concerns and that it's okay. And like we talked about before, the different dimensions of life, mental health is equally as important as physical health, spiritual health, overall emotional health. It's as equally as important. So normalizing that, and being able to, build that awareness, if that's through advocacy, if that's through our political climate, whatever that may be, to try to advocate for individuals within our community so that they can have the mental health resources that they may need during this time.
What are some of the stereos and the stigmas surrounding mental health in the conversations that you have or that you just see in the community that kind of bother you?
The first thing that comes up is if I get my therapy, I'm crazy. Or if that's just for crazy people, or, really those labels that, individuals typically use, which can be really harmful. Most people who attend therapy services are far beyond anything like that. So really trying to reframe that and trying to reframe that therapy is, once again, that support space, that safe space for individuals to process, that safe person that they can trust, building that guidance, building that feedback, problem solving different life stressors. So normalizing.
In your time here helping families through therapy, has your perspective on family homelessness changed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has. It most definitely has. It's brought my own individual awareness of how complex it can be and how there are a lot of different things behind it as well. So we talked about the trauma, we talked about different life experiences that have brought them here today. So really using a sense of empathy and putting ourselves within these families' shoes individually and in their own experiences, it can be really powerful to take that step back and grow that sense of empathy, grow that sense of awareness, because every family here has a different story. And once again, when we hear that story and when we see them move forward from that story and not let their past define them, that can be something that it's inspiring.
That inspiration, how do you send that forward to maybe a landlord, an employer, a teacher, to have them realize and understand the growth of families that are moving out and into housing again? Mm-hmm. What message would you send?
Yeah. To the teachers, to the landlords, to whomever community resources that clients are trying to connect with, I really emphasize to advocate for ourselves and advocate, the family advocate for them, let them know their story. Let them know that their experiences that they have had as well, and rebuilding that confidence so that they can advocate for themselves, because their story deserves to be heard, in hopes that that teacher or that landlord would also grow that sense of empathy as well, and be able to give them a chance, or be able to, let their story be heard.
Well, Kaylee, I see you brought some notes. Is there anything that you'd want to add that maybe we didn't get a chance for me to ask?
Well, I don't think so. I think that, the therapy services here, it's really a great service that, Freedom House lets us have here, and lets us work with individuals to grow their own, insight towards themselves, and to really take that step back to look at their journey and be able to not let that past define them, and be able to move forward and retell their story, be able to author their own story, I guess you would say. And, being here and working with these families, it's really powerful to see the interdisciplinary approach of the success coaches, the different advocates here, and be able to watch all of the supports that are supporting this family in every way, shape, and form, and being able to watch the growth of that is really powerful.
The partnership that Freedom House Ministries has with New Community Clinic, Kaylee comes in every Tuesday from 8 to 12 to sit down and have sessions and talk through some of the different situations that families are going through. How different do you think it would be if you weren't here in the building, as opposed to asking families to go to the clinic?
It'd be very different, because there's a lot of different barriers. So utilization, I think, would be lower, just due to, transportation barriers, due to childcare barriers, due to overall just time management barriers. A lot of individuals here are working different shifts that collide with our own shift here. But being in this setting, it can often feel more comforting for clients during this time, because this is their space. And, having someone come to their space, see their journey, see what their day-to-day looks like here, it can grow that trust, and it can also grow that sense of comfort too.
Kaylee, one thing we do on Inside the House podcast is the previous guest asks the current guest a question, and then you'll have that opportunity.
Great.
So Jen Schmo, Executive Director of Freedom House, on the first podcast, left this question for you. What has Freedom House left on your heart with family interactions here?
I think that it has left a lot of individual growth, compassion, empathy, awareness, and overall knowledge of the community, knowledge of individuals and families experiencing homelessness, and that knowledge that I can take with me in my own journey as a therapist, and be able to grow that awareness as well.
What question do you have for our next guest?
My next question for the next guest would be, how can Freedom House staff implement mental health and awareness in mental health with all of the different departments in Freedom House? So if it's an advocate, if it is volunteer coordinator, if it is success coaches, how can we implement putting that awareness of mental health and putting that mindfulness of individuals and families' mental health within their work with them?
That's a really good question. Kaylee, thank you for taking the time to sit down to talk about therapy and mental health and stigmas and the things that you go through in the conversations with each family. We greatly appreciate what you're doing to help and the time that you've taken today. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning into this episode of Inside the House podcast.